Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living, Victoria. My name is Carrie Hunter, and I'm the Senior Minister at the Center here in Victoria. We are located on Cook Street in the Cook Street Village Activity Center. If you'd care to visit us in person on some Sunday in the near future, we would love to see you there. We don't always have balloons and noisemakers. We did today. It was just one of those days where we injected a little bit of silliness into everything. And so I thought I would give that a try tonight, and I hope that that wasn't too loud on your ears. I have balloons all around me here, and it was a good day at our center. So today, the subject of my talk is remembering to be happy, or remember to be happy. Something that is sometimes pretty easy for us to forget these days with all of the things that are going on for us. So it starts today with a little kitten. A little kitten was um, in a back lane somewhere, and it was just running around in a circle, chasing its tail. And you've probably seen little kittens do that, or even some older cats doing it. And up came an old alley cat and asked the little kitten what on earth it was doing. And the little kitten said it had just been to philosophy class, and his professor told him that happiness lived in his tail. And so he was chasing his tail to find happiness. And the old alley cat said, I never went to philosophy school, but I can remember a time when I used to chase my tail too. And I believe that happiness does live in our tails. But the thing I found out is, rather than exhausting myself chasing my tail, that if I just walked along business as usual, that happiness was always following me. And I thought, cute story, but also a great metaphor for our lives. Are we running around in circles, chasing our tails, chasing after happiness, looking for things outside ourselves to make us happy? You know the drill. I will be happy when, or I will be happy if. I'll be happy when I have that big house. I'll be happy when I have that new car. I'll be happy when I'm making 5 times the amount of money that I'm making right now. I'll be happy when I live in Paris for 10 months. I'll be happy when I move to the South Seas. I'll be happy when I lose 30 pounds. We all have these kinds of voices in our heads from time to time. They're our own voices. They don't belong to anybody else. But we tend to think that our happiness is reliant upon something outside ourselves. And of course, like everything else, it's not. It's all about what's in us. Happiness lives inside each one of us. The thing is that we kind of cover it over with our busy minds, our busy thoughts. We can do so much damage to ourselves in terms of being unhappy just by dwelling upon things that are not happy things to think about, whether they're things that have happened in our own past or things that we're projecting are going to happen in the future, if we're looking at what we don't have rather than what we do have. And so it's a really important reminder that, we can stop chasing our tails. And as we go through life, focus upon things that are good, focus upon things for which we're grateful. And and if I have nothing else to say today, that's the important part. It's the focus, because that's where it all happens. So, as I was thinking about the title for this talk today, a book that I've had for probably 20 years fell into my hands. It's been in my book cupboard here, and it's Neale Donald Walsch's book, Happier Than God. And so I just kind of skimmed a little bit of it. I didn't read the whole thing. But it intrigued me because he begins with saying that that we are meant to be happy, absolutely meant to be happy. In other words, we're born to be happy. There's no sign on us as we come out of the womb that says it's going to be a miserable life, and I'm going to be experiencing a lot of hard stuff. There's absolutely nothing like that goes on for us. The thing that we forget as we grow out of infancy and childhood is that we have a choice about how we're going to feel about everything. You know, you see two little kids playing in a sandbox, and all of a sudden they have a spat over something, and maybe one of them has grabbed the other's toy or something like that. And, and you know, one of them might be crying, or they both might be crying. And in a couple of minutes, they're just buddies again. They're just sitting there having a good time back in the sandbox. They're not remembering what just happened to them, you know, or what it was that they felt was something they should have some dispute over. It's just gone. But as we get older, we tend to carry these things around with us. So when Neale Donald Walsch says, you know, that we're meant to be happy, it's an interesting thing to think about. But he says more than that. He says, if we're not happy, we are meant to be happy, and we can choose to be happy. If we're already happy, we can be happier than we are now. If we're really happy, we can be happier than God. That's the title of his book, Happier Than God. And I kind of frowned upon that when I got the book. I like Neale's work. I met him many, many, many years ago before he was, you know, a renowned author. He was traveling around from church to church and speaking. And he came to our center in Vancouver at the time and filled a room. And there were, I think we paid $25 for a whole day with Neale Donald Walsch, which couldn't happen these days. But he was just getting started, and he had self-published his first book, Conversations with God. So Neale is an interesting guy. And when he talks about being happier than God, as I say, this kind of sounds like it's duality. It sounds like, well, there's God and there's us, and you know, we're into a little one-upmanship here, and that's not what it's about at all. You know, you've probably heard somebody say in the past, you know, that guy has so much money that he's richer than God. You know, and as Neale points out in his book, you know, it's a superlative. It just means that we can always be happier. No matter where we are right now, no matter what's happening in our lives, we can be happier. And that's something we need to focus upon, and we shouldn't be chasing our tails with it. So in his book, he talks about this being ancient wisdom, this choice for happiness, the way that we can create it in our lives. And of course, when we're talking about our particular teaching, we often say, well, it's ancient wisdom, new thought. You know, for a while, New Age got mixed in there, but New Age was, you know, mixed up with a whole lot of other things that really aren't part of the New Thought movement, which is based on some of the teachings of the Transcendentalists that go way back into the late 1800s, early 1900s. But they go back way beyond that as well. We're talking about the teachings of Buddha, the teachings of Jesus, the teachings of gurus all over the world that have been combined together into this beautiful teaching of the oneness of each of us to everyone and everything. That God, Spirit, Source, the universe, the intelligence, whatever you want to call it, is in everyone and in everything. So it's in you, it's in me, and none of us has more of it than anyone else. We all have equal amounts of it, and we were born with it, and we were born of it. And so if you haven't heard that before, it can be a bit of a brain twister. But it's really important to understand that we have this power within. And back in the day, you know, in the late 1800s and even in ancient times, this was based upon faith. You know, there were people of faith who believed, absolutely believed, that they could overcome anything by thinking happy thoughts, by thinking beautiful thoughts, loving thoughts, peaceful thoughts. What's happened, of course, is that we now live in an age where science proves this to be so. We can create, and we do create with our minds all the time, with our thoughts. We live in the age of quantum physics. And Dr. Ernest Holmes, who was the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living way back in the day, said that he looked forward to the day when science and religion walked hand in hand. Well, this is the day, folks. You know, and I mean, not just today, but in just the last couple of decades, the proof is there. And if you start Googling quantum physics and its relationship to human thought and manifestation, you'll find all kinds of studies that were done at universities and are being done at universities that actually measure how our thoughts do create form and how they affect other things. You know, Neale Donald Walsch said, the observed is affected by the observer. So whatever it is we're seeing is affected by us. But those things that are in the invisible, that we haven't yet made manifest, happiness, with whatever it happens to be, the new job, the relationship, those things are all part of it. I have a guilty pleasure of watching the Ellen DeGeneres show at noon if I happen to be home at noon when she's on television. And Jennifer Aniston was a guest. And a little girl in the audience asked Jennifer Aniston what she should do to become an actor because she really wanted to grow up and be an actor. And Jennifer Aniston looked at her and said, "Well, do what I did. Just say, 'Thank you, universe, for my job as an actor. Thank you for my success.' That's the way it works." And Ellen was nodding her head. Ellen, of course, grew up in Christian Science, but really is a proponent of what it is that we teach in Centers for Spiritual Living right now. And I thought, wow, when somebody as famous as Jennifer Aniston stands up and tells people this, they have to take notice. But they may be wondering what it's really all about. Where does it come from? And so we have this combined wisdom now. Ernest Holmes, of course, studied all of the world religions and synthesized things into this teaching. Um, much of it based upon the teachings of Jesus, which we cannot discount in any way. There are people who don't believe that Jesus ever lived. There is certainly a lot of evidence that he did. And the thing is, the teachings, if we simply read the wisdom in his teachings, we could have peace in our lifetime. We would have peace in our own souls. We would have happiness in our lives. And we would have joy beyond measure. We simply need to be in that space, understanding that this man was the example, someone that we can follow in terms of how to live our lives and how to love others and how to make a difference in the world. So, Neale is telling us this is the time, and he's not the only one who's telling us that. Spiritual teachers everywhere on the planet are saying this is the time. And certainly it is the time when it is really needed, as we see so many things that are unlike love, unlike peace, unlike joy all around us. Not just, the COVID thing that's been going on now for a couple of years, but the wars that don't seem to cease, the way that people are mistreated in so many places in the world, people in our own country who are often mistreated. We really need to get a grip on this now. And it all starts with you and with me, and it starts in our minds. And it's about choosing happiness, because how can we be unhappy if we're just thinking about happy thoughts, happy experiences, thinking about living our lives in a loving, honorable way? It's so important to do that. If we dwell on all that is wrong in our lives or in the lives of those around us, then we're focusing upon that and we're creating more of it. Because, as Dr. Holmes says, what we focus upon expands. And so if we're focusing upon things that make ourselves and others unhappy, then those things will expand. We'll have more of them, and we will become unhappier, and we will be helping others to become even more unhappy. And so what we need to focus upon is the goodness that we see, the beauty that we see in our lives. As wonderful teaching for little children when they're speaking is to ask them, is it true? Is it kind? Is it beautiful? If we could grow up asking ourselves those questions, and as adults, if we could ask ourselves those questions today, we would be living in a very, very different world. So as we're focusing upon these things, how do we do it? You know, I have been thinking about that this week. Well, actually, not consciously thinking of it. When I decided on the topic today, remember to be happy, memories came up from long ago for me of very happy times, all kinds of them. And some of them were silly, which was why I got into some silliness today with balloons and noisemakers, and we even had chocolate. But as I was thinking about them, what the first thing that came to mind was many years ago, my husband and I were sailing with two friends from California. We were sailing the San Juan Islands for a couple of weeks. It was an amazing trip, and I wasn't involved in sailing. Sometimes I was steering, but I wasn't involved in putting up the sails or managing them in any way. I have a kind of physical dyslexia, and I see those things backward, and it would have been pretty dangerous on a boat with me sailing it. But I volunteered to be the chef, and I cooked for us during that time that we were out on the water. One day we pulled into Friday Harbor and dropped anchor, and we went ashore, and there was a summer festival going on, and there were a lot of people from the island who were just milling about, and there was this big circle that we joined, and inside the circle there were a bunch of chickens and a duck, and there was about to be a chicken race. Well, the innocence of that, the purity of that, the small town wonderful part of something like that just captured my imagination, and I just felt so joyful watching it. And of course the duck won the race, and following that there was a bubblegum competition to see who could blow the biggest bubble. Well, I was just in one of those frames of mind that I thought, why not? I entered the contest. Remember double bubblegum? And I was the only adult in it. There were just all these little kids and me. And so I managed to blow a nice big bubble, which popped, and the bubble gum stuck to my face. And I didn't win. One of the little kids won. But it was just such fun. And for me, I have never been somebody who just became uninhibited very easily. But there was so much joy there that day. It was just infectious, and I just wanted to participate in all those things. Anyway, we were back on our boat, and the next day, um, in the morning, the guys pulled in the crab traps because at night they would put them out with bait in them and then haul them in the morning. Well, there was never a crab in any of them. The bait would always be gone, but there would be no crabs. So we decided that we would go ashore and take our shovels and dig up some clams, and we would cook some clams. And as we were headed towards shore in the dinghy, I looked down. The water was fairly shallow, and there were dozens of crabs on the ocean floor. And I wondered if I could scoop one up. So I put my shovel down, and a crab attacked the shovel, just clutched it. And I lifted the shovel out and just tapped it on the bucket, and the crab fell into the bucket. So within a few minutes, we had a half a dozen crabs, which was more than enough. And we headed back to the boat laughing about how simple it was. We had this new discovery about how to go crabbing, instead of putting out the traps at night. And I had never cooked anything that was alive before, but being the cook, that was what I had to do. And so I, boiled a pot of water and put some seasoning in, and put the crabs in. And then my friend Fritzy and I went out in the dinghy, and she showed me how to clean the crabs. And then we took the crab meat out, packed it on ice, and we found a lovely place to drop anchor. And I made a big salad, and we had a lovely bottle of wine, and the crab was on ice, and I couldn't eat the crab. Um, I had killed these crabs, and I just couldn't bear to eat them afterward. It was also an interesting thing to observe for me. But I still laugh about how easy it was to get those crabs to attack a shovel, and to put them into uh, into a vessel of some kind. So that trip was really wonderful. And as I think about those things, they're a bit outrageous and they're very funny. And they did make me very happy. But also, I had taken 7 books with me on that trip. I was going to read them all. And at the end of 2 weeks, I hadn't even opened one of the books. I sat with a fishing pole in my hand a lot of the time, just feeling completely at bliss with the universe, feeling at one with everything. And as I said to my people this morning, I had a fishing pole in one hand. If I'd had a kite in the other, I would have felt completely connected to the universe. But of course, we know that when we go within and feel that presence within, that we are connected to the universe, we are connected to God, we are connected to the holy presence that is within. Best way to get there is through meditation and prayer, but also, there's something for me anyway about being out on the water and just being in that perfect, peaceful place. Not a care in the world, not a worry in the world, a place that I call perfect contentment, that is a place of great happiness. And as I thought about that, I thought, happiness, there are different kinds of happiness that we experience. There's a kind of joy when our babies are born. There's a kind of joy in watching them grow up and their accomplishments. There's joy in our, in relationships. There, there's a kind of quiet joy that I get on the water, but I also used to get if I climbed a mountain when I lived in the Banff area and would just sit on the mountaintop and look out at the view, and I could sit there for hours and just, again, be in perfect peace. And it wasn't this big, joyful thing. It was just that my heart welled up with contentment. And for me, that really is a form of happiness. I remember many years ago, Liza Minnelli um, wrote a song called It's a Quiet Thing. And it starts out with the lyrics, when it all comes true, just the way you planned, it's a quiet thing. And I think how true that is when I look at moments in my life of great success, moments of dreams coming true. It was always a quiet thing. I wasn't popping champagne corks or, jumping up and down with joy. I was just feeling this expansiveness in my heart, which really is that presence, feeling that presence of God and being so grateful. And so gratitude is really an important part of being really happy as well. And so, we talk a lot about living in the present moment. And it's so important because it's in this moment that we are creating our tomorrows by the way that we're thinking right now, by what we believe right now. That is a spiritual thing. When we're looking back on, the bad stuff, if we're dwelling upon those kinds of things, then we're creating more and more of that feeling within us, which is not a happy thing and which does not serve us well. Ernest Holmes wrote that principle has no precedent. In other words, whatever has happened to us in the past does not have to affect how we are today or how we will be tomorrow. We get to choose right here and right now. We have free will. We get to make the choice about how we're going to be. We can choose happiness. If we're in a place where we're feeling kind of down, we can remember the happy things. And that's where I think going into the past is a positive thing. When we allow some of those experiences, some of those memories to come up for us, then we start feeling happier. And what I discovered this week is some of those silly memories were coming up. All of a sudden, more and more were coming up for me. And as I was experiencing those memories again, I was feeling more and more joy within. And it's such a good lesson for all of us, is to dwell on the good, to dwell on the happy times, and then to create more of them, to say, I choose this today, and I choose this for tomorrow. I choose this for my future. This is the way I'm going to live my life. It's such an important thing to do. And I was thinking about people who lived extraordinary lives that we would not consider to be happy lives. And one of the people that I was thinking of was Anne Frank, who said, if we take the time to just think of all of the beauty that is around us, we'll be happy. And this is the young girl, Anne Frank, who was hidden away with her family, hidden away from the Nazis during the Second World War. was eventually discovered and taken to a concentration camp where she died of typhus. But she had happy thoughts while she was there. She wrote about those things in her very famous diary, the Diary of Anne Frank, which I'm sure a lot of you have read. And then I was thinking about Helen Keller. There was a wonderful documentary about her life on television a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember if it was on PBS or if it was on CNN. It was one or the other. Kind of think it was on CNN, and it's something that you could look up on YouTube. I was astonished. I had seen a movie that was made about her many, many years ago. And it was basically about her childhood when she was just this out of control child. You know, at 19 months, she lost her eyesight completely and lost her hearing. She became profoundly deaf and then out of control. You know, the family didn't know what to do about her or what to do with her. She understood nothing. And then came along Annie Sullivan into her life, her caregiver. And Annie Sullivan not only taught her to talk and taught her to think, but she taught her to think about abstract things. And Helen would ask her, you know, what is love? You know, I don't understand love. Tell me what's love. You know, if you haven't been able to see, touch, you know, experience things and to have them described to you, very hard to come up with those abstract ideas and to understand them. And Annie Sullivan kept, you know, trying to explain to Helen, you know, and basically what Helen gleaned from it was that it's love is not something that you can see, and it's not something that you can touch. It's something that you feel in your heart. Annie Sullivan would keep taking Helen's hand and putting it to her heart and saying, this is love, and then embraced her. Helen Keller has to be one of the most extraordinary people who ever lived. You know, as somebody who was blind and deaf, she wrote 14 books. She was a political activist. She traveled the world. She circled the globe 37 times, lecturing. And she was in Japan lecturing after the Second World War. Truly a remarkable human being, an incredibly beautiful woman. There were video clips of her, or film clips of her. I had never really seen clips of her before, and I was struck by her beauty. She spoke wherever she went. It was very difficult to understand her, so she always had an interpreter with her, in the same way as if, you know, if I were in Japan and I couldn't speak any of the language, that I would need an interpreter to interpret my English into Japanese. She needed someone to interpret the sounds that she could make as words into a language that people could understand. And Annie Sullivan was that person for her for a long, long time. But after Annie Sullivan died, there was another woman who came along who traveled the world with Helen. And Helen would speak into one microphone, and her caregiver, her interpreter, would speak into another. Helen was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 1956. You know, imagine when that little girl who was out of control, who could not speak, who could not hear, and her parents did not know what to do with her. Could they ever have dreamed what their daughter would be, who she would become, and the gift that she would be to the world, and that she would be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize? You know, makes my petty thoughts very, very small and very, very petty. You know, I can't complain about anything in my life when I look at her accomplishments. And what an inspiration for us all, you know, to reach out beyond our littleness, to reach out for the sky, to reach out to God, to become the greatest expressions of God that we can be. You know, as many people would say, in any circumstance, what would Jesus do? in this moment? You know, as an expression of God, with this power and presence within me, how do I best express this in my life? Certainly not by going to war. Certainly not by disrespecting others. Certainly not by being negative about anything in my life. And so, for me, I think the road to being happy is really about sometimes following the road back into our memory banks of times when we experienced great bliss in our lives. And, you know, as the title of the book went, you know, don't sweat the small stuff. And actually, most of the things are small. They may seem very, very big to us on any given day, but putting things into perspective later, they're pretty small in comparison to a lot of things that are going on. So I just invite you today to take a little bit of time in the days ahead to sit and remember your really happy, happy times. You know, the times where you were really joyful, where you were just exploding with joy, the times when you laughed at yourself, the times when you were a bit outrageous, the times when you experienced that outrageous kind of happiness, and then the times when it was a quiet thing, you know, where it all came true just the way you planned, and it was a quiet thing. Happiness, love, peace are quiet things. Let us remember. I'm so grateful, and so it is. Thank you for being here today. I really appreciate your time here. And if you ever want to drop in to see us in person, we're at 380 Cook Street in Victoria. Would love to welcome you there on Sunday. Our services start at 11 o'clock sharp. We do have a meditation service, though, at 10:30 if you'd like to join us for that as well. And then we have time afterward for tea and coffee and a bite to eat. So welcome you to come and join us for any or all of those things. And if you like what you're hearing here and you care to make a donation to our center, I invite you to do that. You can do so by going to our website, which is cslvictoria.org. It also tells you a lot more about us. And there's a button there that says donate. And if you click on that, it will give you the opportunity to donate by PayPal, or if you look in this fine print under PayPal, it'll say by credit card or debit card, and you can do so that way. You can also send a donation by email or e-transfer to donate@cslvictoria.org. We really appreciate all that you give. There are some of you who do not attend our center, but that you are committed givers to us, and we really, really appreciate that, because it's, you know, I people don't necessarily like to hear people, especially ministers, talk about money. However, that's what keeps us going. That's what keeps our doors open. That's what keeps this channel open. That's what allows us to come together in person on Sundays, one way or another. And it's people like you, what you give, what you do, and it's all our wonderful core of volunteers, a happy, happy group of people. And I just thank you all. Thanks for being here today. And I hope you'll join me again next week. Blessings on your week. Have a wonderful one and have a happy one. And so it is.